everyone, welcome to another episode of the Read Right to Left podcast. As always, I am Simply G, joined by my wonderful co-host Ray from Whimsical Pictures. Today we're going to be talking about BL or Boys Love in honor of 801 Day and the August celebrations that the fandom has every year.
Yep.
So we have also had some questions from you guys in regard to this topic. Thank you guys so much for all of your support in the last episode. We really appreciate it. Hopefully this will be interesting to you guys. We're going to go into not only the history of this demographic, this genre, but also into our favorite things we enjoy, our first exposure to this type of media, and let us know your thoughts as well.
I think this is a very love-or-hate kind of genre, with a lot of people finding it very intimidating to even start.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we can give a bit of a rundown and maybe some recommendations for beginners.
Absolutely, because as you said, it's something that I think a lot of people find very, not confronting, but it's just a lot to take in at first glance. And
That's
I can
what he
understand.
said.
But it's definitely something that isn't for the faint of heart, especially if you're new to manga or this demographic. There's a lot available. There's a lot that's not necessarily very palatable to just the general audience. Yes.
Decent. Acceptable.
So hopefully we can help give some recommendations to that, also explain why certain tropes are so popular, and yeah, hopefully everyone will learn something. Whether you are a fan of BL or yaoi, or you've never read any, you don't really want to read any, or you're hoping to sort of dip your toe in, hopefully this will help you gain a little bit of knowledge and perspective on this particular topic.
So I guess the first thing was someone asked us how 801 Day, August 1st, came to be Yaoi Day, BL Day.
Yes.
So this has a really simple explanation. So you know how May the 4th is Star Wars Day? Because May the 4th be with you? It's basically like that. So 8 can be pronounced ya in Japanese, 0 can be pronounced o, and 1 can be pronounced I. So it's ya o I de.
Very straightforward. Honestly, I didn't know that until I had to look it up recently, because I thought the same thing. Like, I knew that it was there had to be some meaning behind it, and there used to actually be a, I guess, imprint of DMP called 801, obviously a yaoi imprint, and it used to be quite explicit stuff. I think they're more explicit things comparatively to some of their just more DMP titles. But I didn't really know. I was like, is the day named after that imprint? But why would it be? Because that doesn't even exist anymore. That just seems like such a strange little thing. Yeah. And of course, looking it up, it's a very simple explanation, a bit of a pun. And yeah. I would expect a lot of people don't actually know the reason why 801 Day is Yaoi Day, but
now you know.
A relic of the early to mid 2000s when this type of stuff, these type of manga were very popular and very prolific within the community as well.
Yeah, it's weird how much terminology we just pull from Japanese. It's like, well, it's pretty easy to understand if you speak Japanese. But it's kind of weird that we use it in Western fandom.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. I mean, it's fun.
Yeah.
And now we have 2 sex numbers. 69 and 801.
But 801 obviously is the 1st of August. Every year, a lot of the BL publishers, most notably Sublime, have big, exciting announcements, lots of new licenses. We had Futakiya as well start very recently, and they had a bunch of their new stuff announced there as well. So it's a big event day for these publishers on social media as well. So if you are a fan, I'm sure you have been following it, and you would probably have noticed that there's a lot more licenses being announced, a lot of sales as well. I know that Sublime does do a big digital sale on their website. So it's definitely something to look out for if you are part of the community, or if you are someone who enjoys this type of manga. It's one that all the fans sort of wait for in anticipation.
Yeah, I feel like especially this year, there was a lot of hype with Given and everything.
Yeah, especially because obviously that anime is currently coming out. And in the last couple years, we've had, I think, more and more BL anime being made.
Yeah, we actually have good ones now.
Yes, thank God for that. I mean, we still
for the first time in history.
We still get the odd series like Super Lovers getting adapted.
Oh my god.
But more and more we are seeing some better BL find their way to an animated form. I'm very excited for the Twittering Birds Never Fly film. I really love that series. Super duper excited to see how they do it. Given has been very good. I'm a little bit behind on that currently, but it's been great for what it is. Even a series that I don't particularly love, but I mean comparatively to some of the other stuff, Love Stage is pretty, like, it's tropey, but it's not really that terrible. And that just got a dub, which is very surprising. So.
Yeah, Hitoriji My Hero. That one got an anime, right?
Yes, it did. And a dub, I think, as well.
I think so. That one's not one I'm a huge fan of, but it's definitely of a higher quality than literally anything we've ever gotten until Yuri on Ice made a splash.
Yes.
So we should talk about our own history with BL, how we got into it, if we consider ourselves into it, how we consume it and everything.
I believe I started reading BL fairly early on in my career as a manga fan, mostly online via scans. I think that was pretty typical for a lot of young people because it's not really something that you see a lot of in libraries or bookstores, at least not in Australia especially, because it is obviously male gay romance, usually very explicit. So it is harder to find on shelves, but that's how I was exposed to it very early on. And as a young person, you do sort of just consume everything. I've read some good stuff, I've read some bad stuff, and I figured out pretty early on the stuff that I didn't like, so I was very, I guess, lucky in that sense. I don't have too many attachments to series that have very, very terrible tropes, aside from maybe World's Greatest First Love, which is still my biggest guilty pleasure. But even like Junjo Romantica, I didn't enjoy that. There's so many things wrong with that series, and honestly the worst of it to me is the age gap between two of the three couples. The couple that doesn't have the age gap, I'm like, they're fine. It's the other two, I'm like, no thank you. And I actually was exposed to that series. I think I didn't watch it, but I heard about it from my best friend, who was the one who actually really got me into anime. And she found it, I don't really know like what her attitude is towards anime and manga in general is, because she likes to watch she used to watch a lot of shows that were just like terrible for the sake of being terrible and just laugh at them. So like So Bad It's Good, but I never found them so bad it's good. I just found them really painful to watch. Things like Bludgeoning Angel, Dokura-chan, that sort of thing.
It keeps coming back.
Yes! I will never be able to escape that series. But Junjo Romantica was one of those series, and she really enjoyed the Junjo Terrorist couple, which is a 17-year gap, and the younger is like 17 years old, and I'm like, no, oh god. She's like, oh, it's so funny, blah blah. I'm like, it's not funny, that's just really it was not a good time. So that, I guess, was kind of my first being exposed to it, and it wasn't until later that I've really started to want to find BL that I enjoyed as more than just, okay, here's two hot guys making out, having sex, and like, give me something more than that. And I don't really know how I found it. I think it was via Amazon recommendations and reviews, was 7 Days. And that was the first time that I had, I guess, consumed a BL that was, I mean, that's really not an explicit series at all. And I would say it's definitely one that is easy for first-time readers to get into, because it's the slow build of a relationship rather than just like jumping into sex and then all of these terrible tropes of sexual assault and, oh, nobody seems to be enjoying this relationship, but they have to get together in the end because that's what happens. And then it was from there that I found more and more artists that I enjoyed their stuff without having to deal with the worst of, you know, rape equals love and just generalization of sexual assault and the heteronormativity of it. And so, yeah, over time, I think, like with all manga, you do get a better idea of what you actually enjoy about a series. And so now, I'm sure many of you know, I'm quite picky to the BL that I read, and I do have, like with all of my manga, I have certain expectations of it. I mean, a lot of people say that if you read any BL, you're a fujoshi, you have to. I don't really consider myself, because I find that, not because of any negative stigma in regards to the Western side of it, but it's more so that it's just another type of romance fiction to me. Like, I don't really care that it's like, it's just, you know, gay romance, just like Yuri is just a different type of romance. And I have a complicated relationship with it, but I find myself just, it's part of manga for me. Like, I don't really quantify myself as being a specific fan of a particular demographic or genre. So yeah, it's complicated for me in that way, but obviously I do read plenty of it. I support plenty of it, and thankfully much more of the good stuff without all of the toxic tropes is coming to English in a much more accessible way, including the one that I mentioned, 7 Days. So yeah, I do actually look forward to, and obviously follow, a lot of these publishers' social media, and there's plenty of stuff that I don't really care about that are available in English, and there's plenty of stuff that I do really care about coming to English. And I must say that if I get a recommendation for BL, I do always sort of do my own research before I just jump into it, because there's a lot of people who are big fans of this genre, and they don't really see any problems with certain tropes or whatever, which is fine, like, more power to them. But like, I'm more sensitive to certain things than they are, so I do have to like go in and check.
Yeah, I wish a lot of BL fans would be a little more clear in tagging their dubcon. But yeah, for me, just trying to think about going way back. Content warning for like aggressive cradle Catholicism and ignorance. But I was quite homophobic in high school, which is hilarious in hindsight. There was one person at our lunch table who turned out to be straight. So I had a lot of like what we would call fujoshi now, but I guess yaoi fangirls at the time in my group of friends. They were always talking about, you know, they really liked Sanji and Zoro. They were really into that one. They were talking about whatever hardcore BL they'd been reading on scans. We were all really into Hatalia.
Oh man, the dark days.
We all had a country. I was very like self-righteous about not being into that and refusing to read it and stuff. So I think my first positive interaction with, I guess I would say, an anime with gay themes. It's not necessarily BL, but it was back in 2011 with Number 6. And I was so deep in my Catholic closet that I was completely caught by surprise when they like kissed and danced halfway through the series or whatever. But like I liked that series. So, and that was my first exposure to the idea of BL not just being about sex, and that it could just be a totally normal romance that just happened to be two boys. And from there, I got into like Tumblr and stuff.
Yeah.
Just, you know, completely separately, just because I was into anime and everybody else was on Tumblr. And I feel like if you're on anime Tumblr, you inevitably become something of a fujoshi.
Yeah.
It just happens. Because it's just everywhere. There's not a single series that isn't, like, hugely shipped.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember my first BL manga that I really enjoyed, that I did read on scans. I'm sorry. I did start out reading BL on scans. But it was Mr. Mini-Mart or Konbini-kun, just because I saw like a set of images on Tumblr or something. Thought it was cute, looked it up. It was very cute. So from there, I read a lot of stuff. I'm very picky about art style in anything, but especially BL.
Yeah.
Because I really hate that, like, Junjo Romanica style with the huge chins and the huge hands. And then the uke is just, like, 3 feet tall.
Doe-eyed. Just like, looks like a child.
Like a little Cupid doll. Yeah, not a fan. Something I liked about Mr. Mini-Mart, like Junko does draw her semes, her tops, different from her bottoms, her ukes, but the difference in character design wasn't nearly as stark as I feel like was in vogue at the time.
Yeah.
So that introduced me to this idea that BL could have normal artwork. You know, there is kind of a sex scene in that one, but that it, again, could just be like a normal romance. And then I just became more and more rotten, and now we're here. And I read far more Yuri than I read BL, but I feel like I get something out of BL that I don't get from any other genre. And it's hard to put into words. First of all, the fact that paradoxically, it is this almost exclusively feminine space. Even though I know a ton of guys and masculine people who enjoy BL. But there is something that is almost a safe space about it for women and girls. The relationship between the creator and the reader always feels so much closer in BL. And I also appreciate just the complete and utter self-indulgence. If you ever want to know whatever dumb stuff your favorite mangaka is into, just read their BL manga. And that doesn't mean like fetishes, like it can, but also just like food or a certain country or a certain subgenre that they just seem to feel the freedom to just explore entirely unself-consciously and
Shamelessly.
entirely, yes, shamelessly, with abandon in BL. I don't know if that makes sense. But
No, it absolutely does. I think there's definitely this freedom to BL and yaoi, whatever you want to call it, that because for a long time it was definitely like the starting point for a lot of female mangaka getting into the industry. And because there's this perception that like fujoshi will consume anything, like regardless of quality to it, so it allows a lot of creators to just go in, hone their craft, and then they can, get better and better, whether they want to move on to more general demographics is also quite common. So you get like the really, really good stuff, and then you get like the really bad stuff. But if it has certain tropes or if it ticks certain boxes, then people will read it. It does allow for these creators, these women, to explore things. I mean, they tick the boxes, but then they can be completely self-indulgent, as you said, in a way that a more general serialized manga can't be. I mean, Fumi Yoshinaga is a great example with obviously her food. She does also like a lot of her manga has a lot of her BL has food focus.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, Gerard and Jacques is historical fiction. Obviously in France comparatively to like Oku, which is Japan, but I can definitely see how that could spawn from that. And for me, like, Yoshinaga is a great example in where her BL, although it does have, ticks the boxes of you have to have sex scene here, you have to have, these characters, there's always something more. There's always like a much grander plot or world, or even just like a emotional turmoil that you don't see in a lot of the BL from that period. So even though there was definitely good stuff coming out at the time, you can see how much more emotionally complicated her characters are compared to a lot of the stuff that was also releasing in that period. Junko is also a great example of mangaka.
A great example of her mainstream works almost being more self-indulgent than her BL.
Exactly. And I think also BL authors or mangaka, they do have the self-awareness. They're not afraid to, totally embrace that they're part of this weird community that just loves these things. And there is, as you said, like, there's not really a shame to it. They know who they are. They know what they enjoy. And, either suck it up or get stuffed. Like, it doesn't really affect them. And so you can see, I mean, Junko, all of her BL stuff is very comedic. Her more general shoujo stuff is very comedic and very self-aware, very knows what it's talking about in regards to, if you're not aware, she also wrote Kiss Him Not Me, which is a shoujo series about a fujoshi, becoming hot and becoming popular, which is usually a pretty unlikable trope, but she does it very well. And the main character of that is very, I feel like everybody knows a character like Kay. So it works really well in how true to life it is, but stays comedic, like, because it is self-aware. She does know exactly what she's talking about because she's part of the community. It doesn't feel like she's judging that character for her interests and
Yeah.
her personality. The other one is Natsume Ono. We don't really have any of her BL in English, but oh man, she sure does love elderly men. Not elderly, but mature men. Mature
older gentlemen.
men. Which is fine.
Distinguished.
Yeah, absolutely.
Silver fox.
Which is not really the typical for BL. Usually we have our beautiful high school or university men.
And yet, she's wildly popular over here.
Exactly. So I feel like with anything, if you're passionate about what you are writing, people will attach themselves to that and recognize that. And BL really is one of those spaces where women can be just completely self-indulgent about their passions without that, oh, you're a weirdo who likes older guys. Stop trying to shove that in your face. What's wrong with you? There's really not a judgment there that there would be if they were writing just normal quote-unquote manga. Yeah. It's a interesting space, to say the least.
Yep. All right. So that's kind of us, our relationship with BL. But we should probably define this confusing myriad of overlapping fan terms.
Yes.
That we got a couple different questions about.
Yeah.
So the term that we've been using is BL, or boys love, which is that's the marketing term that's used right now. So like if I go to the bookstore here in town, there'll be a BL section. That's all just BL novels and manga. So that's just used as a blanket term for male romance series aimed at a presumed female audience. But here in the West, we also hear yaoi and shonen ai very commonly.
Yeah.
So I guess, what is your association with yaoi and shonen ai? Because I can explain how they're used or not used in Japanese, but do you want to explain how they're used in the West?
So in the West, the perception of yaoi is like the explicit stuff, the stuff that will have sex in it, usually just like porn without plot type of stuff, especially. I think that's what a lot of people associate as, if you're not a BL fan or not a yaoi fan, that's what people immediately think of when you're talking about yaoi fangirls. People who just want to see two guys having sex.
Butt stuff.
So that, I think, is what most people associate with yaoi in the West. And then there's shonen ai, which is more so the fluffy kind of no real explicitness to it, and sometimes also just like not even an explicit relationship insofar as like not confirmed to be romantic. I've seen some people slap the shonen ai label on something like Pandora Hearts or
Really?
Nabari no O, in which there's maybe, because again, fangirls, there's this perception that like, yes, there's a secret gay relationship going on, but you never see it. It's never like the focus of the series.
I feel like these outsiders are underestimating our power to imagine secret gay relationships in absolutely anything.
Exactly.
Devilman is shonen ai.
No, boys like that, so it's not allowed to be.
That one's explicitly gay.
Yeah, exactly. But a lot of people because I see it a lot on shonen that is written by women, because a lot of girls read it. There's usually hot guys who are in a very close emotional relationship with each other. As I said, things like Pandora Hearts, Nabari no O, Black Butler's another one. And because of that, a lot of people, I think, a lot of guys in the fan community avoid them because they just assume, oh, that's gay. I don't want to be reading that.
Side note, speaking of figuring out what mangaka like by looking into their BL pass,
Yes.
never, ever look up Yana Tobaso's BL. Ever. You will learn things that you might have assumed. You should leave them as assumptions.
Yeah, don't confirm things. Thankfully, I have avoided any of her BL, so I don't have to worry about that. But so obviously there is this division between the two terms in Western fandom. Other things that are actually explicitly gay relationships between men that are shonenai are things that, as I said, don't have a sex scene, are more so about this slow build of a relationship between two characters. It's sort of like, for me, because I don't use these terms, I find them they're too black and white for me, because there are definitely series that are a focus on the emotional building of a relationship, like Mr. Mini-Mart that you mentioned before, but that has a sex scene in it at the end. A lot of BL, especially single volume BL, they'll have 5 chapters of, a relationship building up,
and then a bonus chapter.
Yeah, bonus chapter with the sex, and you're like, okay, cool, I've gotten, like, everything, as I said, has been satisfied. You don't need...
Only Serious About You does that too.
Yeah. It's a complicated thing, and I think it definitely is one that I feel a lot of Western fans put too much importance to, because really that's not something that the Japanese side does a huge amount of, just with the license, or like, I guess, original works that are being published compared to like doujin stuff. So
I almost feel like, we have a range of ratings for books in the West. And, I do agree that it's good to mark something that is explicit, 18 plus, but I think it's okay to leave it at that. To be like, this is all ages, this is 13 plus, this is 17 plus or whatever, 16 plus, this is explicit. I think that's fine, because it's like, people in relationships have sex.
Yeah.
And that's normal. And it's like, you talk about shonen ai being about the slow buildup of a relationship, but the slow buildup of a relationship oftentimes also includes sex.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's almost this idea that a series that has sex between its male characters is lesser than a series that just doesn't show that.
Yeah.
Or doesn't get that far.
Yeah. I think that's also my attitude toward it, is that, I mean, any relationship, heterosexual or homosexual, does have a sexual element to it. Like, that's just not every relationship, obviously, because people have different needs, but
asexual spectrum.
Yes, but a vast majority of people do, and it's totally normal. I mean, teenagers are having sex all the time. It's not a uncommon thing, but there's a difference, I think, between like the sex in Mr. Mini-Mart, which is obviously between two boys who are going out and care about each other and obviously have built this relationship, and then sex in something like Finder, which I don't read, by the way.
Yari-chin's Bitch Club.
Yes, where it's just very explicit for being
to be
explicit.
Porn.
Yes, exactly, which is fine. Like,
I mean,
cool
with
if
a
you
title
enjoy that.
like Yari-chin Bitch Club, you know what you're going in for.
Exactly. And so,
it provides.
Yes. So that series is like a definite 18 plus, rating to me. But something like Mr. Mini-Mart...
it's like the cover is covered in dildos.
Yes. But Mr. Mini-Mart is I think it's an 18. Let me look at it. I think it's an 18 rating on there, but I would regard that as a 16. No,
yeah,
it's not. It's
16
a 16
plus
plus
for sure. Because that's not a very explicit sex scene at all.
Yeah. And
I don't think they even get naked.
Yeah, or at least not completely naked. 7 days. 7 days is, I mean, that doesn't have any sex in it. It has maybe 2 kisses in there. And so that should, in my opinion, that should be in all ages. Or if you really have to put a rating on it, like maybe a 13 plus. But that's a 16 plus. I know that for a fact. And that's like, why? Why? It's not, it doesn't make sense to me. But yeah,
gay people are deviants.
Apparently. It just doesn't make sense. It's a little bit inconsistent is the word I'm looking for. I don't know whether that's just because of the expectation of the US market and not wanting to ruffle the conservatives' feathers with normalizing gay relationships and having to give them 16 plus ratings, especially back then. I say back then like it was 50 years ago. It was like 10 years ago.
Yeah, but it's like it was 50 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
We're getting Saint Young Men. It's a whole new world.
It is a whole new world out there. But I feel like June, who is they used to be a major BL publisher. They really don't put out much at all anymore, thanks to DMP just being terrible with money. But they used to give all of their titles, I think, minimum 16 plus rating, even if there was just nothing really explicit about it.
I almost feel like it was a marketing thing too, because like the girls who were at my lunch table, you know, they were looking for titles with a little something. So it's like they maybe wouldn't have picked up something with a 13 plus rating, or without that shrink wrap in the store.
I think now with so many BL coming out and so much diverse BL coming out, we are seeing more and more people realize that this as a genre is something that has a lot of different levels of a relationship to it. And if you aren't a fan of the very explicit sex that is just, oh, we need a sex scene and this is all you're here for. And I think publishers realize that as well, because obviously we've seen more and more publishers licensing BL, which is a great thing to see. So the way they're marketing things is much better than when it was just like BL imprints publishing things. Because there's a way that June and Sublime market things compared to like Seven Seas or Kodansha.
Yeah, and I feel like more mainstream publishers, like Seven Seas in particular, I think they rate things very fairly. Like I think Go For It Nakamura is a 13 plus, which like obviously.
Yeah, it's a teen rating, which is 13. It's not. It's not wrapped or anything either compared to like
no, because T I think is a pretty normal rating for most things that aren't like, you know, Pokemon.
And then compared to, I mean, Sundae's other work, which is Total Eclipse of the Eternal Heart, that was wrapped, but I think it's that's an M, and not just because of the sexual side of it, but for the literal murder that goes on in that book,
the
violence,
everything.
Yeah.
Pedophilia.
So that obviously has warrant to be, you know, shrink wrapped in stores. You don't want your 12-year-olds to be flipping through that, you know, willy-nilly.
Oh god. But yeah, so yaoi is butt stuff. Shonenai is no butt stuff. That's basically the Western definition, I think. The Japanese side of things is that both of these are significantly outdated. Yaoi is specifically like a term for parody works. So you wouldn't use it for your two OCs, your original story. You would use it for your Sasunaru Dojinshi or whatever. It's basically just a fanfic term similar to PWP, plot what plot or porn without plot. And similar to that one, it does have several iterations of what it stands for. So originally it stands for Yamanashi, Ochinashi, Iminashi. So basically, no plot, no point, no purpose. So it's basically exactly the same as PWP.
Yeah.
But some people say that it stands for Yatte onegai ii koto, which is do something good to me. And my personal favorite, Yamete, oshiri ga itai. Stop, my ass hurts. So, yeah, it's a fanfic term, pretty much always used as a self-deprecating joke. It was created by a doujin circle who used it as a self-deprecating joke about their own work. And it's really not used anymore, even in fan circles, as far as I know. And then Shonen Ai, if we get into BL history a little bit, this was a term that was used for like proto-BL in the 70s. So stuff like The Heart of Thomas, Kaze Toki no Uta, those are the two most famous, as well as a lot of the stories that ran in Junei magazine in the 70s. So it hasn't been used since the 70s, really. I don't like it personally because something that doesn't come across to non-Japanese speakers is that shonen refers to quite a young child.
Yeah, little baby children.
12 or 13 at the most, which was the age of a lot of the characters in those 70s series. But that was because the readership was that age as well. So if you talk about Shonen Ai, it sounds like you're talking about something like Kaze Toki no Uta that includes explicit scenes between
young kids,
preteen babies. Not that Kazeki isn't a masterpiece that I love with all my heart, but it was a different time with a different readership, and it would be weird to write explicit BL with sex scenes about children. Don't do that.
Yeah, it's not a please don't. I mean, it's
I get that it has a different Western meaning, but when I hear it, I'm just like,
no thanks. Also, we've talked a lot about, obviously, BL, yaoi, shonen ai. The other thing I do want to mention, which isn't really in the scope, but all of these things are, as we said, sort of a female community written by women for women. This isn't, in the West you do see, and I'm sure in Japan there are plenty of guys who read it as well, but this isn't really, this isn't gay comi, which is like gay men writing for gay men. That's very different, and it has its own sets of tropes and like what they look for in their manga. So I just wanted to mention that because I feel like obviously with BL being such a huge thing in the West comparatively to gay comi, people just don't really know that distinction, or they just aren't aware of it. So I just wanted to mention that. Because
although
also,
there are a lot of female gay comi artists, just because they like bears.
The big beefy dudes, because that's beefy, what gay comi is. Gay comi is definitely that focus compared to sort of the beautiful bishonen of most BL, and again, that's just interesting to their audience. I will say that considering Fumi Yoshinaga's personal tastes in men, I'm surprised she hasn't done a gay komi, because she's said that she much prefers like men with a big appetite is how she puts it. So yeah,
Oh no, a chubby chaser.
yeah.
Well,
So
Haruko Kumota as well. In one of her little columns in Itoshi no Nekoke, she was like, she really likes guys with a bit of meat on them. And she mentioned a specific celebrity, but
no, Yoshinaga mentioned sumo wrestlers. So I'm like, okay, alrighty, okay.
dude, she should write a BL about sumo wrestlers.
Absolute, I'd read it.
I would read it.
mean,
I mean, I feel like there is room to expand into different body types in BL. Like Sakura is someone who I'm not a big fan of, but she has had a lot released over in English. And she really likes big, muscular dudes.
Yeah, very muscle-bound men. We are seeing more and more, as I said, like diversification in what's available in English, which is nice. There are also publishers that have put out gay komi as well, so if you're wanting that, maybe check it out. It's not going to be put out by Sublime or June or any of those people, but
it's out by Bruno Gamunder primarily.
Yes.
And I recommend Mentaiko Ito. There you go.
Okay. Everybody note that down if you're looking for some men with a bit of meat on their bones.
Keep in mind that gay komi is, unlike BL, almost exclusively extremely hardcore pornography.
Yes, that's also. We're not going to get the sweet building of a relationship in gay komi. These are...
Which is mostly just sort of a symptom of the magazine requirements.
I just wanted to mention that for people who are like, well, we're talking about all this gay manga, but we're talking about stuff that's written by women for women. What about all of those actual gay people? What's their take on it? So I did want to just mention that.
Yes. And I'm sure we will do a show on LGBTQ manga eventually.
Absolutely.
Perhaps when Our Dreams at Dusk finishes.
Yes. Well, that's December, so maybe not then, but we might do it for
Really?
Pride next
Volume
year.
4?
Yeah, Volume 4. It's a
Wow.
fast release in English. I'm very excited about that. I'm very, very happy. I'm still waiting for my Volume 2, though. It's taken forever to get to me. We might do it for Pride next year, Pride Month.
That'd be a good idea.
Yeah. Okay.
But we'll do it eventually. Next month is Yuri, by the way.
Yes. So if you're wanting to hear about us talking about girls kissing girls, we got you covered. Just
boy, do I have a lot of feelings about girls kissing girls.
Yes. So, sorry to interrupt you. Continue.
We talked a little bit about sort of the proto-BL of the 70s. That sort of gradually changed style to be less like sweet, androgynous little boys making googly eyes at each other at a European boarding school, to stuff more like From Eroica with Love, and then into stuff like Banana Fish throughout the 80s. We get more taste shifting. We get this more like heteronormative, semi-uke dynamic. You see more explicit content coming in. There's a lot of mixing with slash fan culture. So, people who are shipping Kirk and Spock or whatever. And then we get into the 90s and the aughts. And this is where we first hear the term BL in marketing. This is where we first get, other than June, which at this point is 4 different magazines, we get a bunch of different BL magazines and a lot of the tropes that I think we grew up with. So, did we want to talk about how BL was growing up in the 90s and aughts and compared to how it is now? Because I feel like people have rather outdated images of BL in their minds.
Yeah, the perception has definitely clung for a lot of people in regards to like BL from like 2004 and the stuff that was popular then. It's been 15 years since then, and a lot has changed. In the 90s and early to mid 2000s, a lot, probably majority of, I don't know if it's the same in Japan, but majority of the stuff that was getting licensed, released in English was very much just explicit for the sake of being explicit. There was a lot of normalization of sexual assault, this idea that no means yes, and a character, even if they're crying and saying no, stop, this, that, whatever, as an audience, we're supposed to believe, like, they say no, but they mean yes. We know this is just, like, mind games, which is obviously a very unhealthy mindset, especially for young women to be reading. Not a good thing. But I think a lot of people, a lot of fangirls were really exposed to BL by this doujin, so shipping their favorite characters, whether that be Naruto and Sasuke, One Piece characters, whatever. You know, there's a lot to choose from. A lot of people very invested in their ships, myself included, but like there's definitely people who, and I think that there's, as I said again, this perception of the fan as well as being like only looking for that, and that's the only reason they consume certain media, like always seeing gay in everything, which is fine, but also like for me that's not true. Like I really don't have yaoi goggles. People are like, oh my god, this is so gay. I'm like, it could be gay, but that's like, I'm not watching
I always
it for
see
that.
gay in everything, but I do it on purpose.
Yeah, no, it's a totally legitimate way to enjoy your media, but I'm not gonna be upset if something doesn't turn out to be gay, like some of these people do, which is a bit not great. But
I also feel like a lot of those people that people got mad at and everything were teenagers at the time.
Yeah,
and everything feels like it matters so much.
Yes,
when you're a teenager.
And as a teenage girl who is trying to explore her sexuality, it really works as BL works as this buffer in which you can be consuming sexual media but not have the stigma of like it being bad because of this idea of like purity for girls and not wanting this idea that like girls shouldn't be thinking about sex, or at least shouldn't be.
Well, it's a great community and an opportunity. Well, it's not a great community, but it can be an important one for girls to find other girls and talk to them through the veil of BL about these questions and these curiosities and these fears that they have. And they don't have to sort of deal with this demonization of their own bodies and their own sexualities because they are talking about it through the veil of a conversation about two men.
You put it in better words than I ever could. But because there is this perception that boys can have sex and it's expected of them, where girls shouldn't, especially at that age. So it is this safety net, this buffer that allows them to sate their curiosity without being totally vilified for it or feel like they're doing something wrong.
And it reminds me of, there's a quote from Motohagio, of course, from way back, you know, when she was talking about the Poe clan. She was asked about why she writes so many male protagonists. And she was talking about, like, confronting her own internalized biases and how she felt that she could write her own point of view more honestly through a male point of view, and that the lines that she wanted to say sounded uncool through a female character's mouth, but sounded cool through a male character's mouth.
Yeah.
And she wasn't happy about it, but that's why she ended up writing boys so often.
Yeah, it absolutely
And
makes
she wrote
sense.
a lot of BL.
Yeah. But it absolutely makes sense as to why I think that the earliest, I guess, yaoi fangirls that we see in the West were very focused on the very explicit side of it, because obviously the US has some issues with sexuality, teen sexuality for girls. So if you find something that, you know, satisfies your curiosity or your interests, then you do sort of go a little bit crazy about it and just attach yourself to it. And again, these are usually teenage girls who are in this period of wanting to feel like they've found something that understands them. BL, you know, for as much as it is boys kissing boys or boys having sex with boys, there is definitely this attachment that girls can insert themselves into, which is why I think a lot of the 90s stuff was very much that the power dynamic where it was very heteronormative. You have the dominant guy and then the much more submissive guy who I guess was the girl of the relationship.
Yeah. And then the uke is very, like, essentially a female.
Yes.
Like, with a dick stapled on.
Yes, exactly. And then the partner's
like,
very
right
domineering.
down to, they always like chest stuff.
Yes.
Your
and
chest is so sensitive for a boy.
Oh no. Whereas then their partner is very domineering and takes the lead, and so it feels like you are kind of just relinquishing the power to your partner. You don't have to necessarily take responsibility for what is going on. So again, that's kind of like a safety net for a lot of girls, because they're like, well, I want this in my own life, but don't want to admit that I want this. So if my partner is like takes the lead, then I just go with the flow. And then again, that idea of like no means yes, you put up this level of, you know, I'm a good girl, so I have to resist it, but in the end, like, I really do want it, so my partner was right the whole time, which is, again, like, not a very healthy way to think about relationships or sexual relationships, but it is definitely the explanation as to why this was such, or I guess still is, such a common part of BL tropes and relationships, as I said, especially back then.
But I think one of the biggest changes has to do with that. Like, a lot of the fans of the previous generation having been teenagers when they got into this stuff, and the creators now were teenagers when they got into this stuff, but are now adults.
Yes.
And I think current BL trends reflect a general aging of BL readership. Characters are older, for one thing.
Yes.
Like, there's still a lot of high school stuff.
Yes.
But,
a lot less middle school stuff, which is always a good thing.
Yeah. Also, a lot more working men. Office romances. Men living together, sharing a house, raising children, dealing with adult anxieties, and adult relationships. And that has also come with sort of a lessening of the visual difference between the top and the bottom. I think that there are series like Itoshi no Nekoke, for example, that completely forego the top and bottom dynamic completely, which is good, and I want to see more of it. It's still there, but it's less.
Yes.
And especially the character designs are like two adult men instead of a terrifying yeti and a
small
Cupid doll.
chipmunk. Yeah, it's a really nice change to see these, especially the expected character designs change so much over time. I mean, there's always been like parody accounts making fun of the quote unquote yaoi hands, where hands are just so huge and fingers so long.
Oh my God.
But most
Terrifying.
of that, if not all of that, is from the 90s or early 2000s. You don't really see a huge amount of that.
Mostly the early aughts.
Yeah. You don't really see a huge amount of that now, especially with the stuff we get currently being published. There's plenty of stuff that's been published in English, been licensed in English with that. Don't get me wrong. But as I said, it is this sort of earlier generation from a decade or a decade and a half ago that people weren't really, or fans weren't that critical about. And then it sort of, because of that, it became standard and also very easy to make fun of, which I think has led to some people railing back against that backlash. There's a lot of bad blood between certain fans of things, which is, expected, but as per usual, it's female fans who are always the bane of everyone else's existence, apparently.
The butt of the joke.
Yeah. So, thankfully, in my opinion, a lot of that more toxic dynamic between the characters has fallen out of favor. There are still series that have it, whether that be because of more so fetish, kind of the submissive, dominant type of thing.
Yeah.
But it's not this bog standard, this is what every relationship is like in this media.
So for me, a big difference, I think, like you said, is rather than the assumption within the toxic stuff that all relationships are just like this. Instead, we see the genre of BL, or the demographic of BL, splitting into different subgenres. And some of those are specifically like fetish subgenres. So BDSM is popular right now. The other big one, and one that I would consider the biggest sort of connecting point to that extremely heteronormative 2000s stuff, is that, much like in fan fiction here, Omegaverse is huge right now. And we don't get a lot of that stuff in English, but it is like half of the BL aisle when I go to anime. And I think it's interesting, because it's like, even though it's ultimately using its weird werewolf logic to uphold heteronormative relationship dynamics that are very toxic, it still has this inherent interest in playing with and exploring different gender possibilities and like different interpretations of gender and queerness that I don't think we saw so much in the aughts, where it was very much like, this is just how it is.
For anyone who doesn't really know what we're talking about, Amigaverse, I think it started in Western fandom.
I think so, with like Teen Wolf and stuff.
I think it actually predates that. I think it was Supernatural fan fiction that started this.
Probably.
But it's a very, very prolific trope within fan fiction and fan communities, fandoms, where the characters all have a secondary gender. So alpha, beta, or omega. Alphas are obviously like the strong leader types. Betas are just like the
normal
men, that normal.
And there aren't any stories about them.
Yes. If there's any beta characters, it's always as like a support to the other characters who are,
like the character thinks they're a beta and then they find out that they're
oh no,
one of the others.
And then
I'm
Omega,
not normal.
Yes. Then the Omega is much more this like female type, and so they're able to get.
So one of the big things is that alphas, regardless of gender, can impregnate betas and omegas.
And omegas,
regardless of primary gender, can be impregnated.
Yes. So obviously a lot of stuff with like male pregnancy kinks and that sort of thing. There's also this idea of them going into a cyclical heat where they have to have sex for a period of time because they're just so horny, and other like there's fan
the other
fiction
big thing is the soulmate thing. So the alpha, if they bite the neck of like their chosen omega, then they're bonded for life.
Yes.
Which is the straightest thing anyone has ever come up with.
They're mated for life, and if you're an omega, you're like way more likely to be pregnant, I should say.
And the sex becomes just transcendent.
So much better. Yeah, so much better. And there's... yeah. I mean...
That's Omegaverse.
Yes, so
it's very popular in BL manga right now.
It's very popular in BL manga. It's very popular in fan fiction. I'm sure plenty of people who are in fandoms have come across it. Whether or not you're a fan, that's up to you. But it is something that, regardless of what fandom you're in, you could be in, Naruto fandom, you can be in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure fandom, you could be in Supernatural or Teen Wolf, obviously is a pretty obvious one, Marvel fandom, like any fandom, and you'll come across it. Like this is not a uncommon thing to come across.
Omegaverse is huge in Haikyuu fandom.
I wouldn't know. I don't read any fic for that, but everything that I read fan fiction for, which isn't a huge amount of fandoms, I must say, but it's always there. Like you're always going to come across it.
One of the few like couples I seek out doujins for, is Victory from Yuri on Ice. Yeah, because I just love them. Yeah, but looking through like one of the ones that I wanted to look into, because I do like stories about gay parenting, is one of the most prominent Yuri on Ice doujin series. Yeah. And it has their cute little baby on the cover.
Oh, yeah, no, that's...
And I looked into it, and it's Omegaverse.
Yeah, it's...
And it's their Empreg baby.
Yeah, I must say that if that's Koraka's series...
possibly.
Yeah, I have read it. It's not nearly as bad as what you expect. It's really you don't even you do.
And yeah, it's really sweet. It's just I actually don't like pregnancy tropes in general, just in general. And I always, whenever they do Mpreg, I'm like, make the pregnant one a trans guy, you cowards. Men can get pregnant in the real world. You're just too cowardly to see it.
That's the other thing, like, at least with... Speaking of Yuri on Ice, I know that the fandom, like the Western fandom, they have a whole week dedicated to Omegaverse, and that just happened, like, early August or late July, so a butt ton of fic has just come in. Fic for that, and sometimes people, because you can always tell people who enjoy Mpreg and then those who don't, even with the Omegaverse, because there are some who are like, yes, and they have 1 million babies and it's wonderful, and then others that are like, no, just because they're this, they don't want children. And you do see in fandoms, because again, Yuri on Ice is one of the fandoms that I do read fic for, and I don't read a lot of Omegaverse, but there are certain writers who make Omegas intersex rather than just being like, oh yes, you can have pregnancy through your butt. I'm like, that's not a thing. Don't do that. That's
this is
gross.
Where the womb is. It's right behind the balls.
It's like, no. um, so
God,
there are artists
honestly,
or writers who do, I think, try to make it a little bit more gender diverse with intersex individuals or trans, or I don't know if trans is
cool.
quite the right word, but whatever amigas tend to be.
I want to see more like BL with trans guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see more like pregnancy stories and having children stories with trans characters involved. Because there's a lot of dynamics there that aren't getting explored.
I feel like, I mean, Amigaverse, considering that's so popular, would be a way to explore that, but I do think also that might be something that a more general LGBT manga might do as well.
Because another big trend in Japan right now is like the two daddies, like domesticity fetish manga. Like what's the one by Haruko Kumota? Something Rose.
Yeah, the
Briar Rose or something.
Yeah.
That's a very cute series. We're getting one in English that just got licensed. I don't remember what it's called.
I don't remember, but I'll keep an eye out for it because I do like the domestic raising a child together.
Yeah.
BL manga. They're so sweet. I wish we had more
really
Yuri
sweet.
that type as well, but
yes. I just read the first volume of one in Japanese, and it was cute.
I'm just a big sucker for like children and raising children. So
yeah,
regardless,
especially when it's gay.
Yeah, I like it when it's just het as well, but gay is always a plus on.
Well, I just feel like there's so much controversy in the U.S. and in Japan about the gays corrupting children by daring to adopt them. So it's like it's nice to see this like quietly rebellious work that's just like two parents raising their cute kid and living their ideal parent life and it being just cute.
Yeah. I must in as much as I dislike Junja Romantica, I must say that was it Junja? No, World's Greatest First Love. That's the one. And I don't hate that series, but it's not good if you don't like tropes. That one of the side couples that isn't in the manga itself, but is in the novels, and they have had a film or special or whatever made about it, that does have a gay couple sort of raising a child together. It's Yokozawa, and I don't remember the guy he's dating, but it's his daughter from his... I don't know if it's... I can't remember because I don't really follow that story, but because it's novels and I can't read them because we don't have them in English. But his wife, I think, either died or was in a divorce, divorced him, and so now he has a young daughter, and now he's in a relationship with another man, and kind of in that way that her manga are always not sure whether they're actually dating, but they're both becoming like parents to this little girl, and that's usually how you see children being raised in BL manga, is that it is a kid from a previous marriage or their wife died, and then now they're now they're in a new relationship, and it just happens to be a homosexual one, and so that you now have a child in addition to a partner, which is good as well. Like, I don't think that's a bad thing. But we don't see a lot of like adoption stories because again, that there's a lot of controversy there, and I think with a mostly biological child, there is that connection of family, of like it's a responsibility that you take on as a biological parent and then being in a partnership with that biological parent. Only Serious About You is another one with a child, and, you know, raising that little girl. Another series that I didn't like because it was really tropey, but I also kind of liked because of cute raising a child was That Was Good. There's so many things wrong with that manga, but dang it if that child wasn't adorable.
Hey man, we all have BL series like that.
No, I don't own it anymore. It actually annoyed me that much, but that kid is cute. Like that, oh no, so adorable. Yeah.
It's not BL, but I have a lot of issues with Gakuen Babysitters. School Babysitters Club.
Yeah.
That one got an anime.
Yeah.
Like, every time they introduce a new older character, there's just more problems. But those kids are so cute.
Yeah. I started watching Gakuen Babysitters with the intent to finish it. Again, like, yeah, it's not good. It's not something I'd ever recommend, but dang it if cute
those
children...
kids are so cute.
Those cute, adorable children, how dare they?
They're so cute.
They are.
The one who's just, like, obsessed with giraffes, and she just carries her giraffe everywhere. And that's just, she's decided that's her personality. Because she's, like, 2.
Yeah. They're all very adorable. And just the baby. Like, even the baby. Oh, my God. The baby can't even talk. And I'm just like, I want it.
So cute.
Anyway.
That's not BL.
That's not what we're really talking about. So, what were we talking about before we went on this tangent of...
Well, we were talking about what's popular in BL now.
Yeah.
What's changed. And I guess maybe we should go into recommending some series.
Yeah.
What's changed, and sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly. So maybe we can get into recommending some series that are good for beginners and good in general.
So, considering how much we have to say about this topic, how much we enjoy this particular demographic of books, and with all of the wonderful questions and our own want to talk about some of the particular series we really, really love, to prevent this podcast from getting too long, we've decided to split it into 2 parts. So this is part 1. So thank you guys so much for listening. As always, I am Simply G. And I am joined by my wonderful co-host Ray from Whimsical Pictures. I will put all of her social media links down in the description below, as well as the actual link to her channel. Please subscribe to it, guys, if you have not yet, because it's really good. Her recent video was really exciting, and I was very jealous.
Well, thank you.
And if you have any questions for next month's video, in which we talk about Yuri and Girls Kissing Girls, let us know in the comments, as well as on Twitter. You can always contact me there. I'm sure you can get in touch with Ray there on a fairly regular basis too. We are reading all of the comments, so yes, I hope you guys look forward to us talking about some particular BL series, and we'll see you next time. Bye till then.
See you later.